Well, hey everybody, and welcome to my channel, Standing Still, where I speak the truth in love, because speaking the truth is love. I am your friend Jason, also known as Tyndale's Beard, and today I am very excited because it is the day before Independence Day, and I just love Independence Day. I love the 4th of July. I love the flags and the fireworks. Bring it on. Most of all, I love Baptist history. That's right, Baptist history has a crucial role to play in the forming of America as a nation, and this isn't something you hear much about in schools. Nevertheless, a little bit of research, a little bit of digging online, and you can see for yourself that this is true. Today we are going to be talking about one of my personal heroes, a man by the name of Tidence Lane. Who is Tidence Lane? Well, Tidence Lane was born in Maryland near Baltimore in 1724. In those early colonial times, Tidence Lane and his parents moved from their native state of Maryland to Virginia and eventually North Carolina, where Lane grew up and eventually married in 1743. Now, sometime in the later half of the 1700s, Lane came under the ministry of itinerant Baptist preacher Shubal Stearns. Now, if you want to know more about Shubal Stearns, I have some recommendations for you at the end of this video where you can learn more about him. But of Stearns, Lane had this to say. When the fame of Mr. Stearns' preaching reached the Yadkin where I lived, I felt the curiosity to go and hear him. Upon my arrival, I saw a venerable old man sitting under a peach tree with a book in his hand, and the people gathered about him. He fixed his eyes upon me immediately, which made me feel in such a manner as I have never felt before. I turned to quit the place, but could not proceed far. I walked about, sometimes catching his eyes as I walked. My uneasiness increased and became intolerable. I went up to him, thinking that a salutation and shaking of hands would relieve me, but it happened otherwise. I began to think he had an evil eye and ought to be shunned, but shunning him I could no more effect than a bird can shun the rattlesnake when it fixes its eyes upon it. When he began to preach, my perturbations increased, so that nature could no longer support them, and I sank to the ground. Thus Tidence Lane was saved and ultimately discipled under the ministry of Shubal Stearns. Now, Stearns, like I said, is known for his itinerant preaching, but he's also known for establishing Sandy Creek Baptist Church in 1755. Much of the preaching at that time occurred outdoors, which, of course, is exactly where Lane had found him. The coastal cities of North Carolina were more developed, and the royal governor, William Tryon, had a lavish home built in 1770 in New Bern called Tryon's Palace. And of course, taxes were used to pay for it. Now, maybe that sounds like a familiar story to you in the day and age in which we live. Are your taxes being used to pay for some lavish things? I think they are. But let's go on. This act, this building of Tryon's Palace, okay, this was resented by the regulators, a group of farmers from the community of Sandy Creek who were already upset about corrupt government officials and unfair taxes and fees. One regulator by the name of William Butler was quoted as saying, "We are determined not to pay the tax for the next 3 years for the edifice or governor's house, nor will we pay for it." And the regulators would go on to continue to protest and list their grievances to Tryon. Now, I want to give you an account of one event that happened that got the regulators extremely stirred up, okay? On April 8th of 1768, the Orange County Sheriff by the name of Hawkins seized a farmer's horse because the farmer could not pay his taxes. Now, you have to understand how important a horse was in those times, okay? You need to study that period of history and realize that this effectively put an end to this man's ability to do any real work. So, what happened? 80 angry regulators marched on the county seat at Hillsborough. Armed with clubs, staves, and cloven muskets, the group captured and bound Sheriff Hawkins and then rescued the horse intact. As they left town, some of the group fired shots into the roof of one Colonel Fanning's house. This colonel was away at the time, attending court in Halifax. Informed of the regulators' actions, he ordered the arrest of 3 ringleaders of the riot and then called out 7 companies of the Orange Militia. Next, he hurried back to Hillsborough to take command of the militia forces, writing Governor Tryon an agitated letter asking for more authority to deal with the traitorous dogs, as he put it. On hearing the news, Tryon's council had declared the regulators guilty of insurrection. Regulators Herman Husband and William Butler were arrested by Fanning and charged with inciting to rebellion. After 700 regulators marched on Hillsborough, the prisoners were released on bail, but tensions continued to mount. Eventually, things came to a head on March 16, 1771. The regulators took up arms and met in a field at Alamance. The regulators called for a redress of their issues with Governor Tryon, but Tryon, of course, refused to negotiate and called up the militia and headed straight to Alamance. Now, Tryon ordered the group to disband under threat of opening fire. He then proceeded to shoot a white flag-bearing emissary of the regulators and commanded his men to open fire regardless. A cannon blast sent many of the regulators' group to flee, leaving only 300 left to fight. At least 25 of those were killed in the battle due to both disorganization and a lack of desire to actually fight the militia. Keep in mind, these men had come there primarily to talk with the governor. They had no intention of actually fighting the militia. That was not what they were there to do. Even though they were armed, they were trying to resolve things peacefully. Tryon then proceeded to set up camp in Sandy Creek. His militia took 15 prisoners and executed one by hanging without so much as any kind of a court trial. From there, Tryon's militia traveled throughout the regulator territory where he burned homes, took livestock, and destroyed crops. All the regulators were required to sign oaths of allegiance to the crown or face the gallows. A trial was held at Hillsborough, and 12 of the regulators were found guilty of treason and sentenced to death. 6 of the 12 regulators were hanged at Hillsborough, North Carolina on June 19, 1771. It was at this point that many of the regulators moved across the mountains into Tennessee, Virginia, South Carolina, and Georgia. Now, Tidence Lane was one of those who moved his family over the mountains into eastern Tennessee, where he established and became the first pastor of Buffalo Ridge Baptist Church in 1779. The first church in Tennessee, which, by the way, I believe that is still going today. Lane and 6 of his sons served as patriots. Many relatives and descendants of those refugees from Sandy Creek became the Overmountain men, who came 1,040 men strong over the Blue Ridge Mountains to help defeat Patrick Ferguson and the Tories at the Battle of Kings Mountain in 1780, just 9 years after the Battle of Alamance. Now, why do I share this story? I love this story because not only does it have the patriotic spirit, but because it also helps to illustrate the point that being a Bible believer does not mean that you sit idly by when it's time to fight for your freedom. Now, of course, there is a right way to go about things. Don't get me wrong. I want you to keep in mind that the regulators did everything in their power to try and regulate the government rather than overthrow it. They were trying to talk to Governor Tryon. They were trying to reason with him. But, of course, with his desire to abuse his power, that just wasn't going to happen. But when the time came to take up arms and fight for their families in the Revolutionary War, they did so without reservation or hesitation. They became the Overmountain men. So there is a time and a place to stand up and speak out against evil. And my friend, if ever there was a day to do that, that day is today. We need to speak up against evil. We need to speak up about the loss of freedoms in this country. So don't let some namby-pamby preacher sit there and tell you that now we all just ought to be loving and we all just ought to be peaceful and we all just ought to get along. There's a time to stand up and speak for what's right. And that's what this story represents to me. Okay, that fighting spirit that men today, I think, need to recapture because we've lost it. We've absolutely lost the fighting spirit. We're getting tired. A lot of guys today, they want to just go along to get along. They want peace. They want a semblance of normalcy. But we as Christians, we don't get our rest right now. We're marching to Zion. We are going to go get our rest one day in heaven when we go to be with the Lord. And I pray that day comes soon. I pray for the rapture. I pray for the Lord to return. But in the meantime, now is when we fight. We are to be soldiers of the cross. So that's really all I have for you in this video. If you want to know more about Tidence Lane, Shubal, Stearns, and other such Bible-believing patriots, then I want to recommend to you 2 specific books. America in Crimson Red by James Beller. And this next book is called 3 Men That Changed the World The Baptist and American Liberty by Bill Delperdange. You can find both of those on Amazon. So hey, if you like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button, and then be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. And then go ahead and hit that notification bell for notifications when new videos are uploaded. Friends, I appreciate you watching, and I will catch you next time.